welcome everybody to our next WestGrid Town Hall. Yeah, today's stuff, we've got a focus mostly on cybersecurity today, but before getting started, the usual admin ends of things. You can ask questions at info, or probably the best is just to use the group chat anytime during the sessions. And it's usually a good idea to mute your mic and your camera if unless you got a question to ask. So that'd be all good. Today, we thought we would look at cybersecurity a little bit. Cybersecurity has become a very important part of both Compute Canada, WestGrid, and the research community as we get into these more modern times. I had a talk with CSIS at one point earlier this year, just an informal one, but they're getting a bit worried about attacks on the research community itself. And that seems to be developing through the whole COVID-19 end of things, where national actors are trying to get in there and essentially grab whatever research is happening. So kind of exciting times for us. And Compute Canada, through the ICED ministry, has quite a strong focus now on cybersecurity and how we handle these kinds of attacks and the data that we have that researchers put on our systems. And of course, recently we've had two incidents. I don't think they would quite be called breaches. They weren't that serious. One of them on Cedar. And so I asked Martin, the Cedar SFU, if he would like to give us an overview of what actually happened at that incident. That was not an attack on COVID-19 results. It's going to be kind of interesting to hear from. And then further along on that one, I thought it would be nice to get some expert advice on system access, because a lot of that is what happened through some of these two security incidents. The other security incident, by the way, was on Graham at Waterloo, and well, the one we're going to talk about today is the WestGrid SFU one. And then we got a couple of things to talk about at the end. The associate member program will be announced, which is pretty good, and if there's time, I'll do a usual quick operations report. And of course, we'll finish up as usual with some outline of the various user training and things that we're doing. So the Cedar security incident happened a couple of months ago, and I'm really pleased to have Martin here. Martin's the Director of Research Computing at Fraser University, and he is the WestGrid site lead and the Compute Canada site lead for Cedar. So he's the guy who's been guiding the whole implementation of the Cedar system, and leads the operations team, all the sysadmins there. And as you can see from the picture, he's also a climber and teaches a lot of good things around that. Hopefully the Cedar team does not need to wear helmets when they are working with Martin. But so it's great to have Martin here and to be able to give us a really good overview of what happened with Cedar. So Martin, sort of over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. And to avoid any misconceptions, this is not a talk about rock climbing. I actually don't even know where Patrick found that picture. It's a few years old. So what happened? The system got compromised around March 23rd. We weren't absolutely sure, but the most likely time is actually the early morning hours on March 23rd. One thing that actually wasn't very helpful in the whole investigation was that just days before March 23rd, the Cedar system was expanded and completely upgraded. And so quite a few things were changed. The whole operating system was updated. The from a security perspective, the Cedar system was actually on the latest software release, and nevertheless, when the first indications came in that it wasn't running as well as before, the natural reaction was to blame it on that upgrade because it just came in very short succession now. What actually happened is that the system was used for crypto mining, and the symptoms, as I mentioned, was reduced performance of research applications. So we were getting right about that time, maybe a few days later after March 23rd, tickets that indicated that applications were running slower than before the upgrade. And that's basically how the tickets were always phrased. Something changed in the upgrade. What really happened is that these applications were very well hidden from everybody. So you wouldn't see it with your typical commands like top. And they were only detected after one research group actually told us around April 14th that the slowdown of the application only happened between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. So what then happened on April 15 is that the team actually stayed up throughout the night and was actually able to detect these additional processes. And so the compromise was then stopped right on that day. Next slide, please. So, and that started 2 very hectic days of almost non-stop detective work, trying to figure out, first of all, what is happening, how are these processes started, how did the intruder get in to the system, how did the intruder gain privileged access to the compute nodes, and once all of those questions were answered, stopping the intrusion was actually not a very big problem. So the crypto mining processes were started through a cron job at midnight. The strange thing is that cron job is actually a cron job that exists on all CentOS systems and Red Hat systems. It's actually a cron job that checks the battery power, and strangely enough, Red Hat installs that cron job even on servers that don't have any batteries. So that cron job only makes sense on a laptop. What the intruder then did is they replaced the process that it started by the cron job by their own process, but with the same name. And if you wouldn't know that, if you wouldn't detect that, you wouldn't see that. And in fact, usually that executable just plainly doesn't exist. So the processes were then hidden through a kernel module from anybody who would run top or PS or things like that. The intruder gained access through a compromised account, user account. We know that the desktop of that user at his home institution was compromised, and we suspect that there was just a password sniffer installed on that desktop that intercepted that password. We're not absolutely sure that the SSH keys were compromised as well. It doesn't matter. It's as soon as you gain access to the desktop, the SSH keys are as easily compromised as the password. The problem was that that account had elevated privileges on servers that we run for the Atlas project. And those servers export one file system to all compute nodes because it's required by their software. What the intruder did is install a so-called SUID root shell in that file system. So an SUID root shell is basically the same as your normal bash that all of you are running when you log into the system. But instead of running bash as yourself, this shell, if you start it, will run bash as root. And so as soon as you have something like that, you have full access to everything on the system. One thing we did right at the beginning when we detected the compromise, we contacted an external security company and asked them whether they had seen this particular exploit before. They hadn't. In fact, this particular exploit was not seen at all. We'd uploaded it to Virus Central, and it was a new upload. But what that company ensured us that crypto miners want to hide everything they are doing as much as possible. They usually do not access any user data and change as little as possible to the system so that they remain undetected. From that point of view, it is very unlikely, and we found no evidence whatsoever that any user data were even accessed. I mentioned that this was a 2-day, very hectic time, and the team that worked on that basically worked throughout the day and the night. It was actually a very all-Canadian effort with team members from Dalhousie and UVic and SFU, so right across the country, which actually helped because the East Coast is 4 hours ahead of us, and so we were actually able to cover almost 24 hours of working on the problem and still getting at least some sleep. So we were actually, within those 2 days, we were 100% able to trace what the intruder actually has done, how he accomplished what to run these crypto mining processes and how he got there. Once that was all clear, it was fairly easy to stop the whole process. So we stopped the cron job. We removed all the executables that were in place. The compromised account was disabled. We removed that SUID root shell. We additionally disabled the export of SUID root programs from that, actually from all exported file systems. So this particular way of compromising the system is no longer possible today. So that's one lesson actually learned right away. You can actually disable that kind of compromise. We rebuilt all compute nodes. We rebuilt all Atlas servers. The head nodes, and this was a saving grace, were never compromised. The intruder never get privileged access to the head nodes, which has a huge advantage to us, because that way the intruder was never able to access other users' passwords, because the head nodes are the only nodes where people type in their password. So that made our life much, much easier. In fact, throughout the compromise, we never stopped jobs running on the system. So there wasn't any reason to do so, and that way the effect of the downtime was at least somewhat minimized. We had to remove all authorized keys file. And the reason for that is there was absolutely no way for us to figure out whether the keys stored in those authorized keys files were actually your keys, so the keys from the person who owned those directories, or whether those were keys inserted by the intruder as some type of backdoor. So there was absolutely no way to find out, and so we took the step, which appeared to be very, very dramatic and drastic, but we didn't see any other way, so we removed all of those files. Additionally, we removed all, actually we revoked all SSH keys of users who had the private keys stored on Cedar. Those SSH keys had to be considered as compromised. So we actually had to force those users to generate new keys. And those SSH keys were actually then sent, or basically the revocation list was sent to the other Compute Canada systems so that they could block them as well. Next slide. So, what did we learn from this experience? So first of all, coincidences do happen. And so after we got the first tickets about slowness, the investigation was focused on the upgrade that just had happened. And we do get a lot of tickets that tell us, here, this application runs slower than we expect. And basically all of the time it has something to do with that application. In very few cases does it actually have something to do with the system. But nevertheless, in this case, since the system was just upgraded and the users hadn't done anything to the application, it was very natural to consider a relationship between the slowness and the update, which was a complete dead end. As it turned out, the upgrade had absolutely nothing to do with the compromise. It was just a coincidence that it happened a day or two before the compromise. As I mentioned, the system was compromised through a compromised account, and there are two ways this usually happens, either through a weak password or through a compromised desktop or laptop. In fact, I've gone through a few compromises of systems we've been running at SFU, and as far as I can remember, all cases were due to a compromised desktop or laptop. So that's the most common way our large systems get compromised. Once a desktop is compromised, the intruder can install a password sniffer, gets access to passwords, gets access to the SSH keys and their passwords. And there's very, very little we can do to prevent that from happening. So we can only ask our users to do the best to keep their desktops and laptops up to date with security updates to prevent this kind of compromise from happening. We actually haven't heard from the university at which that compromise happened about the desktop. So we don't actually know how that desktop got compromised. So that's something we have no information on, and we have no way of investigating that. What we do need is a better monitoring and alert system. Something that tells us if a user usually logs in from some university in Canada and all of a sudden logs in from Poland, that we should get an alert on that. So that's basically what happened, that all of a sudden that account was accessed from very strange places, and a monitoring alert system that would pick up on that would really alert us much, much earlier than due to the investigation that we had started and that was misled. Anyway, the other thing, multi-factor authentication, or MFA, would have prevented the compromise. So if you, in addition to your password or your SSH key, would have to type in, say, a 6-digit code every time from an application that's running on your cell phone or so, every time you log in, then this type of compromise would not be possible. And Compute Canada is actually working on an implementation of multi-factor authentication for all of its system. It's still a few months away. At least the prototype is still a few months away. So, but hopefully it'll be coming. Next slide, please. So that's the end of what I wanted to tell you. I'm happy to take questions if we then have time for that.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. That's great detail of what actually happened, and that really fantastic response by teams across Canada to work through all these issues. And as Martin says, we've got in Compute Canada, we've now got a National Security Council, and one of the things in that National Security Council's purview is the multi-factor authentication, and to see how we can get that going. I think it'll take quite a while yet before we're anywhere near having user-based MFA, but it's coming. I'm afraid we'll have to do some of that kind of thing. Yeah, any questions? No, I think we're good there. Yeah, thanks, Martin. That was great. And Martin had a couple of suggestions there about compromises on laptops and such. So our next speaker is Scott Baker from UBC, and he's going to talk a little more about that system access and what you can do to help that out. Scott's the manager of sensitive research at UBC, and he's also a member of the Compute Canada National Security Council. I've been working with Scott over some years. He was also instrumental in setting up some of the first policies and procedures in Compute Canada some years ago. So it's great that we have some real experts within WestGrid and Compute Canada who can work on this. So Scott, over to you.
So I'll try to zip through some of this a little bit faster and get us on with the time slightly. I'm just going to try to cover a bunch of best practices for accessing, and the request was for CCS systems. But to be honest, these are best practices, and they're going to work on any system you access. So really, it doesn't matter what systems we're talking about. I think all of these will apply. I'm going to use a consistent format for all the slides, and it looks like this. The top left is what I'm talking about. I'll go into why it's important and why you want to do it, how you do it. And then over in the top corner on the right, there's 3 different kind of histogrammic kind of representations of what this is going to mean for your day-to-day life. How hard is it to implement this particular thing? How much of an interference is it going to cause you when you do your work? And what kind of a security improvement will it buy you? And finally, some of these have like little bonus tips as well. So I'm going to dive right in and go through. They're not in any particular order. These are all really important things. And I'll also stress that as you implement best practices around security, everything you do helps. So it doesn't really matter if you can't do all of these things. Do as many of them as you can. And everything you add in helps with your security and all the systems you access. So the first one is unique passwords, and I'll change it up a little bit to say unique secrets. It is the most important thing you can do in a lot of respects, because your password is what's going to let you into a system. There's automated methods that attackers can use to try passwords that they have found in various other breaches across the internet on all kinds of systems very quickly. The average right now is when there's a breach detected at something like LinkedIn, the passwords and email addresses that are scraped from those services get tried on all the other services within hours. So if you're using the same password on more than one system, as soon as they get it from one, they've got it for everywhere else that you've used the same password. So some people go, it's way too hard to have all these different passwords. I'll never be able to memorize all of these passwords. And that's very true, to the extent that I would say you really shouldn't be trying to memorize passwords. The best way to deal with this is some kind of password vault that will help you generate them. And the other aspect that has come out of advice from NIST and a whole bunch of other very wise security-oriented organizations lately is not to just change passwords on some random schedule. We really should only change them when it's necessary. And that is to assist with this if we're forcing people to change their password all the time for no good reason, and they're trying to still remember them, then the issue with those passwords is that they're going to be inherently less long, less secure, and less unique, because people will start to get frustrated with having to change it and just add a 1 on the end. So I would suggest that you want to look at passphrases or automatically generated passwords as the preference. And also, if you have to do a password that you do need to type in, think about your mobile devices and other keyboard methodologies that you need to type it. You can still make it quite long, but you might not want to pop back and forth between punctuation and letters a whole bunch of times in the middle. Maybe put all the punctuation at the end and all the letters at the beginning or something like that. And if you haven't tried it, I would definitely recommend going and having a look at haveibeenpwned.com. This website is set up by a security researcher. It's safe. It's not going to ask for your password. It's just going to ask for your email address. And it will show you all the different breaches that particular email address has been involved in across all the different sites that it's aware of that have been breached. So I have an email address from about 1994. If I put that one in there, it comes at, well, this was a while back, but it came up with 12 different breaches that I was involved in. Okay. So definitely have a look at it if you haven't seen it before. And this is a thing to consider if you want to be super secure and you have the ability to do so. Maybe create a couple of different email addresses. It's just another different thing where they can't automatically check your password. So password vault. And I would change it up and say a vault for all your secrets. What a password vault does is it allows you to store your secrets in a single encrypted database so that you only have to remember one password to get into it. And then all your passwords, secrets, you can use it for all kinds of sensitive information, get stored in that encrypted vault. I find it faster than just typing in the password because almost all of them have some sort of keyboard combination that will sense which screen or which application you're in and automatically type in your password. And in fact, a lot of them use some techniques to not type your whole password, but they will type parts of it and they will take other parts and put that on the clipboard and paste it in, so that even if somebody has managed to install a keylogger on your machine, it can defeat that as well. See a couple of people asking about password vaults. I can recommend the one I use. It's called KeePass. It's open source. It's available on every platform I can imagine. The thing I like about it is it doesn't store the passwords in the browser, because a lot of my passwords aren't for websites, and I don't want to add to the fact that now I'm risking another piece of software also potentially compromising my password. But any password vault is better than not having a password vault. So if you want to use LastPass, you want to use 1Password, if your institution is providing something, by all means go with whatever that is. It's all better than not having one. And you know, a common phrase I'm hearing among other security professionals is, I don't even know what my password is anymore. And it's true. I generate 128 character long passwords through KeePass. I have no idea what they are, and I don't want to know what they are. And that keeps my passwords pretty unique and pretty safe. And I'm just used to using the vault, so I don't even have to worry about memorizing them. Next one kind of relates to that, and this is about keys. And Martin talked about the SSH keys. And they're kind of like passwords, but they're not like passwords because they're actually a file. So you now have to protect a file, not just something that's in a vault or a string of characters or something in your head. So when you're setting up SSH keys, you got to remember there's a pair. There's the private key and there's the public key. You really don't have to worry about the public key. As its name implies, it's public and designed to be visible by everybody. The private key, on the other hand, is supposed to be private. And best practices will tell you that should actually never leave the system that it was generated on. So if you generate a public-private key pair on your laptop, that private key should be for your laptop, not for your desktop as well, or your mobile phone, or anything else, just the one. That's a really good way to protect it. So it means you have different key pairs for different systems, but that's fine. That's one of the ways you protect it. The other thing you should consider about it, and there's some great advice from Mozilla about this, go and have a look at their key management best practices. They'll tell you all the same stuff. But they also list the current ciphers that are the strongest encryption to use when you generate those key pairs. And they give you a lot of detailed advice. Understanding cryptography to the extent of choosing the right type of key to use is a little complicated. So I would defer to these very knowledgeable individuals who have put it in a great, easy to digest document that explains the kind of things you should look at when you're setting up your key pair. So I would also add that the changing when to change your keys is the same advice as for a password. If you don't think there's been a compromise, there's no evidence of any reason to believe that there's anything wrong with that key, there's no point in changing it. If you think there's a reason of compromise for that key, or that you have any question, that's a good time to change it. The other thing with keys would be if we've heard that the cipher that you used is now no longer valid, or there's a better one, that would be another reason to change a key. This one gets a lot of people. We're dealing predominantly in the CCF with systems that you type things into a command line. And it's a really common thing, everybody's done it I'm sure, to zip over to Stack Overflow, look for the error message you just got, find somebody who's put the code onto the website, copy and paste it right into the command line. The problem with doing that is on a website, and especially if it's just somebody's blog, it's very easy to hide additional lines of code in that text that you will not see on the website, but are actually there when you paste them onto the command line. So somebody can actually inject nefarious code into what you paste into the system just through your copy and paste action. So for that, the easiest thing to do, there's two ways to combat it. One, a lot of the SSH clients will actually alert you if you're pasting more than one line of code, and turn that feature on. And it'll usually pop up a window say, hey, you're going to paste all of this. Is that what you actually meant to paste? And if you were only planning on putting in one line of code, then you know there's a problem. And the other one, if you don't have that feature or you don't want to bother with it, just paste it into a basic text editor first. Because then you'll see exactly what's there. It gets rid of all the formatting. You know exactly what you're going to put into that command line before you do. That's sometimes a really handy way, especially if you need to change anything in the command too, to drop it into a text editor first. It's just so much safer. This one seems silly sometimes, but it's worth mentioning, and that is to sign out of stuff. It's really easy. We log into a whole bunch of different things in our browsers, and we leave them open, and then we go to other websites, and we sign into those. It's important to keep in mind that those sessions for some sites will stay active until we sign out of that site. And because the browser is a single program environment, it'll sometimes allow certain information to carry across with you. This is how places like Facebook actually track you as you move around on the internet. But it also means that if somebody does manage to get a hold of your device and you're signed into a whole bunch of different things on that device in a memorized way, if they can get into your device, they're now accessing all of those things that you didn't sign out from. So I would say anything that's important, you want to make sure you manually sign out of as you're progressing through your day, just to make sure that if you walk away from your computer and it doesn't lock fast enough, somebody happens to get to the web browser, they can't access anything there. As Martin mentioned, the compromised laptop and desktop was actually a vector of the way the attacker got in. We don't know how that happened. All of these different things are ways to help prevent that. And again, it's all layers. So everything you add, every single one of these things that you do will make you more secure. Another one is encryption at rest. This is, I mean, we're pretty used to the fact that if we're SSHing into a system, we've got encryption in transit. That means the connection between us and that system is encrypted in some way. But once you put your information on a system, it's not necessarily encrypted. So if you want to add another layer of protection, if you're storing something locally, if you're using a file sharing system like Nextcloud, encrypting those things individually, the individual files, adds an additional layer of protection. And that can be done quite easily with a lot of the modern zip programs. Will allow you to put a password in. You can encrypt PDF files. You can encrypt Office documents. It just adds an extra layer of protection. It's pretty easy to do. So I thought I'd throw it in there. But the more mobile the device is that you're putting that file on, like if you're putting it on a USB key or a laptop, the more beneficial this is because it's easy for that to get lost or stolen. And I'm trying to speed up a little bit so we don't run out of time. Watch your file permissions. This one sounds ridiculous to say, but if you make it public, it's public. And as silly as that sounds, the #1 source of breaches globally right now is incorrect permissions on storage buckets, basically, object storage buckets in the cloud. So it's something that big companies are getting wrong on a regular basis. And we should really consider the fact when we're storing a file, what is it set to? It's sometimes really easy to just chmod 777 because it's quick and easy to remember, but that's hardly ever the file permission you really want to put on any sort of file. So think very carefully about what you want, and if you're in a folder or working in a project, setting the sticky on that so that it's going to set all newly created files to a set permission in advance that's sane is a great thing to do. This is one of my favorites. If you don't need it, delete it because it can't get stolen if it's not there. Simple as that. Audit yourself every now and then. Have a look at what information you've got stored in a folder. Ask yourself, does this still need to be there in that shared folder for everybody? Because maybe the people who have access to it will change over time. Maybe the permissions aren't quite right. It's so easy to do. It takes 5 minutes and you're done. I think I got like 3 more here. Software updates, Martin mentioned that one. Update your desktop. Don't put it off. Don't remind me later for a whole week. Go ahead and run those patches. Do it on your phones especially as well, because those patches are there for a reason. And there's great, smart people trying to fix things. Often when a security vulnerability is announced, within 36 hours it's already being exploited. So when those patches come out, they pre-announce the patch and then tell everybody what the vulnerability was after for a reason, because you don't have very long to get that patch in. 2 more. Have backups and a plan to restore it. Backups are great, but if you can't restore the backup is useless. So test it every now and then. Make sure that you've verified that whatever you're backing up actually is being backed up the way you want it to be, and try the restore to make sure it works. VPN, almost everybody's institutions will offer this in some way, shape, or form. If you're on an untrusted network, I totally recommend using a VPN all the time. I even do it when I'm on my mobile phone on the cell network, just because I don't want my data to potentially be visible. And as Martin mentioned, the last one, anywhere you can, please use multi-factor authentication. It's an added layer of protection, and just because we don't have it necessarily on all the CCF systems right now, you can use this all kinds of other places to further protect you from compromise. So that's, I tried to get quick there at the end, Patrick. There's some resources in the slide deck. I believe the slides will be available as well as the recording.
Yep.
So hopefully that's useful for everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. And yes, we're running a little bit behind time, but thanks. I think there's some really valuable stuff there, and we should all be aware of it when we're accessing Compute Canada systems. I'm going to switch over really quickly just to Ahmad. He's our WestGrid Director of Strategy and Partnership Development, and just wanted to announce our new associate member program. So a bit different from the cybersecurity, but over to you, Ahmad.
All right, yeah, thanks, Patrick. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here and chat with you about this exciting program. So it will be very quick. So just basically introducing this new program here. Over the years, our team has been getting, quite requests and inquiries about some of the support that we can help them with. Some of the everybody knows here that we do have 7 member institutions. So some of the non-member institutions have been reaching out to who do research and need some help. Some non-profit organizations also who do research have been also reaching out to us for training purposes. So we thought that given that the growing number of requests and inquiries and potentially also the number of research is also growing in that community, in response to that, we felt that there might be a good chance for us to extend our reach and provide support as well to those institutions and organizations. And so we created a program to help them with that and basically give them an opportunity to connect with us, connect with the rest of the research community, to provide them with research support, with training. And this could be a way for them to kind of connect with the national and the regional level on DRI. Basically sorry, I'm just looking at, if you can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So one of the benefits that they will have is once they become an associate member of WestGrid is we're trying to create this kind of research advisory committee or group that allows them to provide input and to take, for WestGrid to take that input and think about how we can actually serve that group and how we can take that information and also relay it also at the regional and national level. So we become the kind of a conduit between those institutions or that research community group and the rest of Canada. We want to be able to allow them to get a fast-tracked access to to support across the board from all the different things that we can, from expertise in software development to multiple research domain expertise, visualization, machine learning, and also we want to be able to provide them with training opportunities, given that these institutions are maybe starting up on certain research or they don't have the same resources as our big 7 members. We can help them with some of that training and build the skill sets in their teams or within their teams. And when opportunities arise, when we have events, obviously we also want to be able to give them certain discounts on events and potentially conferences when we have some of that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, is that this will be an opportunity for them to become more engaged and participate at the regional and national levels and provide their input and provide that feedback on what is important to them and how they are seeing their future in terms of research and research support that they would, they would need. And just to give you a quick update as to what we're doing to launch this, the emails, the first wave kind of emails or communications has been sent out to the institutions, academic institutions. that are non-members of WestGrid. And to be honest, we actually got already a few interests. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is to reach out to those institutions and ask them if they are interested in meeting with me, and where we can take them through the whole program and how we can help them, or how we can collaborate together, and how we can assist them in with the research and the innovations that they're going through. There will be more communications going out as well for potentially nonprofit organizations who do research. We want to extend that out, and potentially some of the other organizations out there that might benefit from such a program. And we will be using obviously different communication channels. So we are doing the emails. We also have the website updated. And if anybody is interested, you can go there, and there's a link now there that says become a member. Obviously, we explained that we have 7 founding members, but we also have another link on that page to take you to the associate member program. And there's a PDF brochure that you can download if you're interested to kind of take a look at that. We're going to be using social media, and I'll be trying to set up meetings as well with some of these institutions and organizations. And once we have a few who have expressed interest and wanted to join us, then the next step is for us to create and establish this advisory group, and then we start going through the operational side of things, where we offer them a training, or we have these regular meetings with them and take their feedback, provide them with support and help. So if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to send me those directly, or if you know of any institution or organization, or you're in one that is interested, you can reach out to me. We do have all that information available on our website as well. So yeah, just reach out to us, and we'll be glad to sit down and chat about this.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmad. Yeah, that was great. I think it's an interesting new program. Folks may not be aware, but many years ago I was at UNBC and was chair of the WestGrid non-majors committee, which is very similar to this idea, kind of building that back up, and we're certainly seeing a great increase in interest from, as Ahmad says, those non-member institutions, and we'd really like to react to those. So thanks, Ahmad. I will not do an operations report. You guys can have a look at the at some of the details if you'd like, but I will hand it over to Alex. As usual, we try to end these town halls with a quick overview of what's happening in the user training and outreach. So, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everybody. So, as you know, we have usually 2 summer schools every year. So we organize 2 summer schools in-person events in May, June, and of course this year we cannot do that due to the COVID situation. So we decided to go with a very long single online summer school, and it's available to all WestGrid institutions. It actually started in late May and has been running for 5 weeks already, so 2 more weeks to go. And it's single stream, 16 courses, and we also decided to offer 3 repeat courses. So the repeat courses are BASH, Introduction to HPC, and Machine Learning. And each course, most courses are 1 to 2 days long, and there are 2 exceptions. Bioinformatics sessions and MATLAB sessions are 3 days each. So the format we ask instructors to follow is try to record as much material as possible, so that you don't have a very long interactive Zoom session, but instead give people more time to watch videos and do hands-on exercises. And then in between these, have some interactive Zoom sessions where you walk through exercises, answer questions, show demos, etc., etc. So not everybody follow this, but a lot of courses follow this format. And for interactive part, in most courses, we use the hands-on training clusters, most clusters that we have set up on the Arbutus cloud system, and also several courses use reservations on Cedar. So for the numbers, we have 300 registrants, so we set the cap to 300 registrants, and we have more than 300 people on the wait list, so everybody on the wait list, we're now invited to the 3 repeat courses. So the Zoom details, the Zoom invites were sent to everybody with a Canadian institutional email address, and we stress that we cannot invite people with Gmail or Outlook addresses to these sessions simply because our mandate is to support researchers at Canadian research research institutions. So we emailed Zoom invites to 83% of our registrants, and it's been going well so far. So the presentation materials, by the way, are open to everybody in the world. So all slides, all videos are available to everybody. Next slide, please. These are the 16 courses that I mentioned. As I said, we've already started running repeat courses, so right now it's too late to join, but we are thinking of repeating a mini version of the summer school sometime in the fall. So we'll announce it probably a few weeks in advance, and you'll have a second chance to attend these courses. So all materials are also available online, and big thanks to all our presenters. So we have about more than a dozen different instructors, and they did a great job presenting these, so it's still 2 more weeks to go. Next slide, please. And then outside the summer schools, we have several other events. So the usual WestGrid webinars will start in the fall in September. The webinars, we are now trying to find the topic, assembling the list of topics that will be presented. If you have any requests, please email us your topic suggestions at training@westgrid.ca. And the final schedule of our webinars will be posted sometime in late August. We are also collaborating with UBC ARC for their summer school in August, so I'll be teaching the Python session. And we also have an ongoing collaboration with UBC Library Research Commons. So we started this half a year ago, and once a month during the academic year, we offer, right now it's webinars, but we started with in-person workshops. Right now it's webinars. So we have a monthly WestGrid series as part of the Research Commons workshops. And in September, we'll do a custom 2-day workshop, online workshop for Environment and Climate Change Canada. And I want to say that if anyone wants to have a custom workshop by WestGrid, please get in touch with us. We're happy to develop custom materials as well. So for example, advanced Perl programming, advanced Python, various Python or R libraries, etc., etc. Please get in touch with us, training@westgrid.ca, and we'll try to develop these custom workshops for you. And of course, I just want to conclude that we are very much looking forward to the day when we can offer all this training in person, because it's a lot of fun, and it's much more enjoyable to do training when you see the audience and not just doing the Zoom sessions. So thanks, Patrick. That's all I have.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. That's great. Yeah. So well, thanks everybody. I think we've going to reach the end there. Of course. You can email us anytime, support@westgrid.ca, and yeah, thanks everybody. I think that's about it, and thanks very much to the presenters for, I think, a really interesting town hall. Maybe we'll see you all again later on in the summer. So thanks everybody.